Welcome back to Deadline DC with Brad Bannon. We talked about international policy in the first segment with Cedric Layton from CNN. In this segment, we're going to discuss the domestic side of the equation with our good friend and regular guest, Sarah Jones, editor-in-chief of Politicus USA and the star of Stage Screen and the World Wide Web. Before we get to Sarah, though, we're going to play this clip of Jack Smith discussing his investigation of Trump's aborted coup on January 6th, 2021. We'll be celebrating this anniversary tomorrow.
The evidence here made clear that President Trump was, by a large measure, the most culpable and most responsible person in this conspiracy. These crimes were committed for his benefit. The attack that happened at the Capitol as part of this case does not happen without him. The other co-conspirators were doing this for his benefit. So in terms of why we would pursue a case against him, I entirely disagree with any characterization that our work was in any way meant to hamper him in the presidential election.
So did you develop evidence that President Trump was responsible for the violence at the Capitol on January 6th?
So our view of the evidence was that he caused it and that he exploited it and that it was foreseeable to him.
That was the Jack Smith, the special prosecutor for Trump's attack on the U.S. Capitol during the Biden administration. I think it's sort of interesting that even though Jack Smith did not get a chance to discuss his findings from his investigation while Joe Biden was president, the House Republicans were gracious enough to give him the opportunity to publicize what he learned about Trump's involvement. Our guest in this half hour is Sarah Jones, who is the editor-in-chief of Politicus USA and a frequent guest on Deadline DC with Brad Bannon. Sarah, Happy New Year.
Happy New Year, Brad. Thank you so much for having me. It's so great to be on with you.
It's always a pleasure to have you on this show, Sarah. Okay, your comment on what Jack Smith had to say about Donald Trump's abortive coup on January 6, 2021?
Well, I think it was really important that we got to hear this, and we need to know, just to set the stage, that Jack Smith wanted this all to be public, and the Republicans refused to do that. And then because his testimony was so damning for Donald Trump and for many of them, they dumped it, on New Year's Eve, and were hoping that nobody would really pay any attention. I think it's really important that what he testified was that basically that he could have made this several criminal cases against Donald Trump. They had the evidence, and for Donald Trump's actions against our democracy and against the United States. And on January 6th, which is a part of his attack on the election, as far as I'm concerned. And so when you look at all of that, this has all been whitewashed. And I think even the mainstream media has played a part by having on people on their shows that were accused of participating in this and allowing them to spin the narrative and to tell, to fabricate the events and to blame Antifa and say there were the FBI were false flags in the crowd. All of that is baloney. These were Trump supporters. They came there. Some of them were armed. They intended to do an insurrection that was violent and possibly deadly. They harmed over 140 police officers. It was a horrific event in our country's history. And I don't think that things can be set right until there is accountability for this on some level. And all of those people who were prosecuted and all of these judges and prosecutors who did that hard work, they were all pardoned by Donald Trump. And some of them have gone out and committed other crimes after they were pardoned. And so he has this criminal coalition behind him. That's who's running the country right now. A lot of people feel that. And it's difficult for people of integrity, I think, and for for people who care about this country to constantly be gaslit about all of this. And I just want to play out also that they dumped this stuff. The Epstein files, they were supposed to explain why they didn't, what those redactions were all about by the 5th. And then what do? They go and they invade Venezuela. And I know you already discussed that, but I'm putting that just in the framework of how they are so good at using distractions so that we don't look over here at Jack Smith and the deposition they dropped, on New Year's Eve. We're instead supposed to go look over here at Venezuela where they're killing civilians.
Now, let me ask you this question. I think you're right. First of all, it'll be interesting to see what happens tomorrow, but on the anniversary of the coup. But it seems to me that people have not remembered or recognized that the Donald Trump made the first attempt, to my knowledge, in American history, and maybe I like to think I know a lot about American history. I did stay in a Holiday Inn Express last night. But does anybody care anymore? Let me react to this. I wrote in my new column in The Hill, which will be out tomorrow online. And you can read it, by the way, at The Hill, muckrack.com/The Hill, when it comes out tomorrow afternoon sometime, that people care more about Trump's domestic misadventures than they do his foreign policy adventures. Do you think that's true? Has he been able to use Venezuela to distract people's attention from his attempted coup 5 years ago, and his hiding of the Epstein files?
I think he has. I mean, you look at the context of what's going on around him. He has these horrible poll numbers. The economy is horrible. It's getting worse. People are getting hit with their healthcare bills. On top of the healthcare bills that we all know about from the Obamacare subsidies that they've let lapse, the extended subsidies they let lapse. There's also what was in his big, beautiful bill that allows the insurance company to gouge Americans from their copays to everything else. And so you're paying more for a policy that does less. And all of that is coming home to roost. People are going to find out. A lot of people think, oh, it's just the independent contractors. It's just the people on Obamacare. No, it's going to be everybody. And I think people are very focused on those things, but I think that he's very good at lobbing a bomb. I mean, this is a guy who understands reality television. That's where he should have stayed, right? He should live on like Real Housemen of DC, right? We should have, or the mobs of New York. That would be like a great show for him. He could be the star of that. That would be great. He knows how to lob a bomb and get everybody to look over at that explosion
And
over there.
literally lob a bomb too.
Exactly. Yes. I mean, that's not even because he's killed
We
civilians.
bombed Nigeria last week too.
Yes. It never ends with it. Like and all of this is because I think the more pressure that he's under and the more he's being held to account for the Epstein files and for other things, his bad poll numbers because of the economy and what he's done to Americans and their pocketbooks, he's going to lash out. I wrote this the first time we were talking about impeachment against him, that if he was impeached, I was worried about what he was going to do to vulnerable people because that's who he is, right? If anybody holds him accountable, he's going to make sure that he inflicts more pain on others so that people leave him alone. That's the lesson, right? He's going to keep ratcheting up the consequences of trying to hold him accountable. You can see that with the Jack Smith thing and the way the Republicans are trying to act like he, listened to their phone calls, which he did not do, and the way they've tried to punish Jack Smith, and he said he knows that it's going to be weaponized against him, all for doing his job, for upholding the law, and he knows he's going to be punished for that. That's the world that we are all living under with Trump.
Well, I certainly hope that he's punished for it. And that leads me into the next topic I want to discuss after the break, which is Democratic political prospects for November 2026. We'll be right back with more of Deadline DC with Brad Bannon after this quick break. Welcome back to Deadline DC with Brad Bannon. I'm Brad Bannon, and she is Sarah Jones, the editor-in-chief of PoliticusUSA. We've been discussing the sad anniversary tomorrow of Donald Trump's abortive coup on January 6, 2021. Let me ask you, you brought up something in the previous segment, Sarah, which I hadn't even thought about. But this week, we have the sad anniversary of the coup attempt. We have undoubtedly more revelation from the Epstein files. And you mentioned something I hadn't thought about is last Thursday, on New Year's Day, millions of Americans lost their federal health insurance benefits, which will require them to pay much higher health insurance rates. And, the question that I have, well, first of all, let's talk about the healthcare thing. Unless something happens soon, the House and the House and the Senate restore Obamacare, millions of Americans are going to have dramatic price increases in their health care benefits. Do you think that's going to cause a big stir, or we just take all this for granted now that Donald Trump can skate through these things?
I think it's going to cause a big problem for them in the midterms. And the reason I'm going to go ahead and say they're not going to fix anything is because they've been claiming they had a health care plan, what is it, 15 years now? And we've never seen it. They've never provided it. And, it kind of gets my goat a little bit to hear like Marjorie Taylor Greene is out here saying, oh, I disagree, with Donald Trump, but, we need to do America First policy. And, then she blasts Biden. He didn't do anything for the American people. And it's like, that is absolutely not true. And she talks about healthcare policy. Well, President Biden and many of the Democrats were trying to improve the healthcare policy that was already an improvement on what we had before that. Before Obamacare, it was horrible. I remember those times before, as an independent contractor, before I could get insurance on the exchange, and you couldn't buy insurance. And if you had a pre-existing condition, which I fortunately didn't, but you couldn't buy anything, they wouldn't let you. So it's, and pregnancy was a pre-existing condition. It was really awful out there. And the Democrats did a lot of work. And it was very difficult to get that push through. And they finally got that done. And then I think Biden really tried to add to that and round it out and make it better. Now, it's not perfect, and it wasn't perfect. And we should have what every other, Western nation seems to manage. Everybody should have health care. That's a human right. We should have that organized in this country. And it's kind of alarming that we don't. But I do think that this is going to be a big problem for them in the midterms. And I don't think they're going to come up with any solutions. They have some vote coming up like, oh, we're going to address this.
Well, we're going to discuss the midterms in
Yeah.
some detail after we get back from this break. This is Deadline DC with Brad Bannon. Our guest in this segment is Sarah Jones, editor-in-chief of Politicus USA, and we will talk more about the midterm elections right after this break for our radio listeners. Welcome back to Deadline DC with Brad Bannon. Our guest in this half hour is Sarah Jones, editor-in-chief of Politicus USA, which I strongly recommend you follow. Sarah, we've got, as most everybody knows, at least I think our listeners are attentive enough to know that we'll have midterm elections for the entire House of Representatives in November and 33 of the 100 senators. And oh, by the way, before I get to that, I just want to thank Sarah. I got a message from the FCC thanking Sarah for saying baloney instead of the word that most people use to talk about the Trump denials. So pass that on. Anyway, midterm elections. This is my theory about the midterm elections, Sarah. The midterm elections, if the Democrats win the House, it won't stop Donald Trump, but it will bring his corruption and chaos into much closer scrutiny than it is now. Uh, and of course, I think Democrats have a shot at taking control of the Senate, which they need to turn over 4 Republican Senate seats, which I think is going to be a tough thing to do, but will be not enough to remove Trump from office, if the House does in fact impeach him. And my theory is even if they remove Trump from office, the gag gift from that removal will be J.D. Vance as president, which I think is as bad or worse than Trump being president, but that's my own personal opinion. But first of all, what's your opinion about Democratic prospects of taking back the House? I read just a couple days ago that Trump supposedly independent PACs have raised $300 million to fight Democrats' control of the House. What's your take on the Democratic prospects on the House side?
Well, I think that I think it looks good for Democrats, but only because what Republicans are doing is so awful. Now they've gerrymandered, they're purging people off the voting rolls. And yes, they have Elon Musk has dedicated who knows how much dark money, and they're raising all kinds of dark money because they're doing the only people they're doing anything for are the billionaires. So they have all the money and they have all the messaging machines. They have all the media captured, basically. Just CBS, and now stuff has come out about the New York Times. It's endless, like the way that they have captured, not to the degree of CBS, but I'm going to write about it. It was an interview done with one of their editors that just left, and they were just talking about how their agenda was to sort of not give context about between the two candidates in the election, to be fair by just presenting each one, as they are sort of in the moment, which of course only benefits one of them. But anyway, so I think that those are all the challenges that I see. And if it weren't for all those challenges, I think Democrats could take 60 houses because the people are mad. And election after election, we see how mad people are at Republicans. And we see Democrats winning seats they haven't won for 30 years. So I think that energy is only going to increase come the midterms. But what is going to come to fight that? All this dark money, there's going to be all the usual propaganda and the lies. And so it is on every citizen not only to inform themselves about what is real, but to make sure the people around them are not spreading misinformation. That is on all of us because the media is not going to do it for us anymore. So we have to do it ourselves. We have to inform people around us. So when they start with their, because it'll all start, the immigration stuff will kick up. It always does. The caravan, there's always some conspiracy coming.
Somalians.
The Somalians, it's always something, right? Exactly what they're doing in Minnesota. Um, what they have done in every election, they will come up with an issue. It's going to be trans people and it's going to be immigrants. And then they're going to pollute the entire, every time you turn on a device or a television or the radio or get on YouTube or a podcast, you open up Spotify, you're going to be hearing about those issues of theirs, and that's it. They are very good at that. They have all the money to do it.
Except for Deadline DC, of course.
Except for Deadline DC and your column, and our work, I would add to that, because independent people and independent media is where it's at right now. You cannot rely on people who have a vested interest in what this president and his enablers are doing, basically. So I agree with you also about this. I don't think I think Democrats are gonna take the House back. But as you said, they will be very hampered by what happens in the Senate. And I think that could be a tie. Looking at those four, what is it? Michigan, Maine, North Carolina, Georgia, the toss-ups. And even so, so we have a tiebreaker with JD Vance, who you've already said you would be more afraid of him as president. I happen to agree with you on that. You're the only person that has ever said that, and I have been saying that forever. So now finally I've got somebody in
Great
my corner.
minds think a lot, Sarah.
Exactly. Because, he is the most vapid, he will do anything for power. We know this because he called Donald Trump America's Hitler, and now he's his bestie. So if you put that in context, and he knows that he's enabling Hitler and that he's working with Hitler, America's Hitler, his words, not mine. That's what he's doing. So of course he's going to be more dangerous. And he's got all that weird, all the tech bros are basically operating him. I don't even know if there's somebody inside of him. And is he gonna, he's got a lot of weird stuff is going on in his personal life and everywhere else. He's a strange one. I don't want him for president. This guy also shouldn't be in the White House. So yeah, I think the midterms will at least do, as you said, we will start seeing some oversight after Democrats take back the House. And they will be able to hold some of what the Trump administration is going to be doing and has been doing through various how they weaponize all the administrative offices, all of the executive office. Basically, they will be able to at least hold some of that to account.
Let me ask you this question to close, Sarah. I've written in the Hill actually several times that given Trump's negatives in the national polls, the overwhelming feeling among Americans that the country's headed in the wrong direction, we can probably win the House by waging a anti-Trump campaign, basically. But to win the presidency in 2028, which is the only way you can finish Trump, Democrats have to do a lot more than that. They have to be bold with imaginative proposals. What do you think about that?
Oh my God, Brad. We need to have a whole episode on that. You could not have
We probably
sung.
will at some point.
You just sang my tune because all I think about, in fact, I have this thing I was going to write that I didn't write for the January 1st, but basically it was about I want to go into the new year like Kendrick Lamar, and I want to see Democrats going forward hold a grudge. And I don't mean that to be a grudge bearer because just to hold a grudge. I mean finally get some backbone, be bold, get out there, because in order to fix all of this stuff, you have to be willing to use the power this man used to destroy it, which we are all, hesitant to use. But we have to be willing to go there to fix all this stuff and rebuild from the ground up and build a government that is responsive to the people the way it's supposed to be.
Okay, we're going to end it on that high note, Sarah, because I absolutely agree with you. I want to thank today's guest, Sarah Jones, editor-in-chief of Politicus USA, and please follow and read Politicus USA. I also want to thank our first guest, CNN military analyst Cedric Layton, who talked about Venezuela. I also want to make sure you watch and listen to next week Monday's show, where we have another pair of great guests coming along. Miss the very best in aggressive progressive online must-see TV at your own peril. You'll hate yourself if you do. Thanks for listening. I wish you all a great Happy New Year.